Good evening, everyone. I'm Erica Parker, Associate Director of Adult Programming at the New York Public Library, and I'm thrilled to welcome you all to the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library and to this beautiful space overlooking Fifth Avenue. The library and WNYC launched this partnership in 2020, and since then, it's become a wonderful opportunity for New Yorkers to come together and share our love of reading. While you're here, I hope you'll get a library card, check out a couple books, or learn more about the programs happening throughout this building. We'd love to see you again. And don't forget to stop by the check-in desk after the program, fill out a short audience survey, and get a free prize. Everybody loves swag. For those watching virtually, welcome. I hope you'll have the chance to visit us in person soon. And come check out everything NYPL has coming up this spring, including our upcoming World Literature and Arts Festival happening April 14th through 30th across Manhattan, the Bronx, and Staten Island. From theater and dance to readings, drag performances, writing workshops, and much, much more, there's something for everybody at the festival this year. To learn more, visit nypl.org/worldlitartsfest. Now, I know you're all excited to get started. Tonight, we welcome Adam Haslett, author of this month's selection, Mothers and Sons, a family drama like nothing you've ever read before. We'll also be joined by the Ophelias, who will share a special musical performance. I want to thank Allison Stewart and the whole WNYC team for being wonderful partners on the book club. Take it away, Allison.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. So let's get a little bit of housekeeping out of the way. These microphones you see over there, they're for the radio broadcast. So make noise. Let us know you're out there. Don't make me sit up here by myself. We would ask you, though, to silence your phones. You can take pictures. We love pictures. Post them on Instagram. Tag us at AllOfItWNYC. And then think of questions, because we always have microphones out in the audience. So think of questions. Questions. When the microphone comes to you, ask a question. You know what I'm talking about. And later tonight, we're going to hear from the band Ophelias. Their sound check was so great. Please do stick around for that. It'll last about an hour. You should also stick around because Adam will be signing books out front, and we'll announce our April book club as well. Also, WNYC, we have swag too. When you sign up for our newsletter, we got WNYC folks out in the hall. Adam Haslett is a two-time Pulitzer finalist. His last novel, Imagine Me Gone, won the Los Angeles Times Book Prize. Thanks to our nice partners at the New York Public Library, 2,640 of you were able to check out a copy of Mothers and Sons to read along with us. Please welcome Adam Haslett. Hi, Adam. How are you?
Good. Good to be here.
What was the original germ of the idea for this book?
Well, I start everything I write with a character. I'm always trying to find a way into the mind, the rhythm, the voice of the person that I'm going to spend probably years writing about. And so I had an idea that there was a guy, a male character, who was living in New York. And I knew, for some reason, I didn't know why yet, he was estranged from his mother. And so I had a scene actually in the book where he comes back from work and is in his apartment overlooking Trinity Church down on Wall Street. This is in an earlier part of the book. And I start from there and I start asking myself questions. What does he do? What's his job? Why is he estranged?
What does he do?
He's an immigration lawyer. He's an immigration lawyer, an asylum lawyer. And so he spends his days talking to people who are seeking asylum. And much like a therapist or a priest or a social worker, he needs to talk with these people about the most difficult things they've been through. But unlike those people, he needs to get their stories quickly and in a particular form that he can then speak to a court about it. So it's both got a lot of emotional content to it, but it's also a very formal, rigid an impersonal process, and I wanted to capture that.
Why did you want him to be an asylum lawyer? You're a lawyer yourself, we should say.
Well, I went to law school.
Went to law
I
school.
shouldn't say that I'm a lawyer, but I went to law school. I think it's that dynamic that in any of the helping professions, there's this question of how do you take in the stories that you hear and the experiences of the people you work with, and allow it to resonate with you enough to be able to be good at your job. I mean, this is true of teaching. It's true of so many. But then also, how do you let those things pass through you so you aren't buried by the totality of the it adding up? And so, I'm just that interested me. And so, as an asylum lawyer, he also is finding out a certain amount about a lot of different places. Right? We meet him. He's got to understand gang culture in Central America. He's got to understand, with this one client that occupies a lot of the book, modern Albania. So he's learning all these things, but again, for that very particular purpose of creating a storyline that is what the asylum seekers, well, not creating, but with the asylum seeker making up the pleadings that will go to the court.
Now, this book is set in 2011.
Yeah.
Why did you set it in 2011?
Yeah, so I had the decision to make, which is that in 2019, which is 2018, 2019, I started the book. And I thought to myself, I could let the past and present president swallow the book, or I could be like, no, I want my own book. And the fact is, you don't have to go back. I mean, you don't have to wait till Trump is in office to find an immigration system that was in crisis. And so, more people deported under Obama and Biden than in Trump's first administration. There's just a lot of the system is broken and has been for a long time. So I wanted, in a sense, to be able to get at those dynamics that I was talking about and not be as much distracted by like electoral politics. Yeah.
Does Peter like his job?
I think somewhat. If someone ever asked me, do I like my job as a writer, I would say I don't know that I have a choice. That he's someone who's addicted to work in some ways. He is a workaholic. And I think one of the other themes that I discovered that I wanted to write about in the course of writing about this was that a lot of those people that I was just mentioning in the helping professions, there can be a certain kind of loneliness that goes along with the work because you're very focused on what's happening with other people. And as a result, you can not look inward. And so does he like the job? I think he comes to the job for reasons. There are things that drove him to that kind of work.
Yeah, you say workaholic.
Yeah.
Aholic is not necessarily a positive suffix.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just think that it's not uncommon for people to, especially maybe in this country and especially maybe in New York, for people to turn to work as a way of dealing with loneliness and other things in their life. Like, you can always work. There's always more work to do. There's always a screen and a email and things to do. And I think that habit of mind is something I know myself, and I know it in a lot of people around me. And I wanted to explore what the emotions are underneath that urge to just fill up all the time.
Let's talk about Vassal's case. Vassal?
Sure.
do you pronounce
Vassal, I mean, I'm not Albanian, so Vassal's fine. Vassal is a young Albanian guy, 21 years old, comes to this country and because he really has to escape his family situation in Albania. He's gay and is in physical danger there, actually from his own family. So he comes and, he's a 21-year-old. He's trying to make a life in New York. He realizes he's got to deal with this, but on the other hand, it's a confusing system and he doesn't trust anybody in it. So Peter has a kind of push and pull to get him to cooperate in a sense in his own case. And this is something that's common in immigration law, which is that you need a lot of cooperation from the person seeking asylum because you need them to get documentation, you need them to talk to you about the most painful things they've gone through. And so he spends a lot of time sort of in a back and forth. And so Basil's story only really comes out slowly over the course of the first 2/3 of the book.
What kind of research did you do into Albania?
I did a lot of research into Albania. I was going to be going to Albania right before the lockdown, and then it sort of, pandemic era came. But I did a lot of research, and also the kind of research that I was doing is in essence the same sort of research that a asylum lawyer has to do, right? Which is that you need to read up on something. You need enough information to describe what the State Department calls like country conditions, like what's the situation in this country for someone in this social group. So I did a lot of reading about that, a lot of reading of history. Ismail Kadar is one of the modern Albanian novelists that I read a lot of. So yeah, just trying to, like when I do any research, you try to do as much as you can so that you're soaking up more than you need,
What part of your research wound up in the book? Something about Albania.
Something about, his family is in northern Albania and the village is in northern Albania. And there is a kind of almost medieval, like legal code called the Kanun, which is extrajudicial. It's more like a folk form of legal enforcement among kind of clans. But it's still very powerful, and a lot of these kind of crimes of shame, like homosexuality or extramarital, sex or anything like that, are still, in a sense, ruled by that. And there's a lot of control that people's lives are under, and that the police will not interfere in. And I didn't know about that.
Peter becomes kind of obsessed with Vasil, not just with Vasil's case, Vasil and Vasil's case.
Yes.
To the point where he's ignoring other
Yes.
of his clients. What about this case has him so thrown off?
Yeah. So right at the beginning of when he encounters him, we see him begin to start kind of forgetting things. Afterwards, it's almost like he's been made distractible. And what's happening really is that something that happened when he was a teenager, not that much, a little bit younger than when Vasil's own experience happened, that he's just looked away from. And with another boy, a boy he was in love with when he was a teenager. And he's just looked away from that. And there are things about Vasil that remind him, both his story and him, that begin to kind of bring this up. And so I was interested in trying to write about something like dissociation, not in the sense of like someone who doesn't know what time it is, but someone who's just not looking at this thing over here. And what that does to your perception of the world and your sense of time and feeling, and that it really can interrupt how you function, which, eventually it does for Peter.
Which brings us to his mother.
Yes.
To Anne.
Yes.
What is the story that Anne has told herself about why her son Peter doesn't visit her in Vermont?
It's a good question. So she's running this women's retreat center in Vermont, where she went in a sort of midlife after she left her husband and entered a relationship with a woman. I think she tells herself the story that Peter was alienated by her change of life, and that she left the family first in some sense, that she departed and left the house that he grew up in and was with someone very quickly after his father died, with this woman. So I think she thinks it's a kind of alienation, that it's in some sense about her and how the decisions she made. Yeah.
How would you describe the spiritual retreat that she's created for her?
I would describe it as a kind of first wave feminist space that she and a number of other women found, and that they want to create a space where women can come and talk about their, not just their spiritual life, but how they see their lives, how they understand themselves in the world outside of the kind of male power structure. And the way they do this is there are three of them, and they describe it as a kind of community of friendship. So they're offering their own friendship amongst themselves as a way of then letting people enter into these circles they do, where they have conversations with one person but meeting with three people. So it's it's a little loose, but it's meant to be quiet and centering and discernment, to use another religious word.
Well, she was once a female priest.
Yes, she was an Episcopal priest, and so she's bringing a lot of that kind of ministry of hospitality, I guess she would call it, but it's not actually religious.
The Guardian called your characters, Anne and Peter, are maddening, admirable, tragic, and utterly human. So now that we've set them up,
Yes.
how would you describe Peter, and how would you describe Anne?
I mean, I would describe Peter, as I would probably many of my characters, as someone who wants to connect wants to have more intimacy in his life than he has, but in his case, doesn't even really understand that absence in a sense, right? And so he's a little bit blinded to his own circumstance, and lives through his clients, as I was saying. So I would say he does good work, but is shut off from himself. And Anne is also in some sense in a helping profession. She's trying to help others. She has a much richer sort of narrative of her own life and sense of who she is and what she's doing, and is able to take that stuff, that material of other people's lives. She's able to process it more thoroughly. And so I actually made that choice in the book. Peter is in the first person present tense, and that's like very much, I think of like kind of the sense of the tense of dissociation. Like I can only see in the present. Whereas Anne is written in the third person and past tense, and so she has that kind of narrative, a capacity to narrate her own life.
There are so many mothers and sons in this book. Peter and Anne,
Yeah.
Jared and his mom, Vassal and his mom who saved him, Peter's sister and her son, even the asylum seeker Sandra and her son Felipe. What did you want to focus on in Mothers and Sons?
Well, I guess I wanted to have all these refractions, right? There was a reason I wanted it to be plural. I mean, we've talked mainly about the kind of the main pair, but I think, I don't know, there's something I think about the mother-son and the father-daughter, like relationships where there's the proximity of parenthood, but the difference of gender. That was something that I was interested in. Also, I think, it's a story, Peter is a gay man. It's a story about like queer life in New York. And I think as a queer guy myself, like having the mothers and gay men have relationships that are often very intense and intimate. And this one is broken off or estranged. And so I wanted to explore that. I was not estranged from my own mother, I'm glad to say, but.
Well, it's interesting because Anne is queer.
Yes. She has sort of two lives. She was married and then she had two kids, but yeah.
But it doesn't bond them.
No, there's a section late in the book where they talk and where Peter sort of says to her, it's funny, people say to me like, oh, well, your mom's queer, like, like that must be great. You know what I mean? Like in terms of people understanding or her understanding him. But no, there's this, because of the events that happened in the past and a way that she tried to protect him from what happened when he was a boy or a teenager, a certain kind of divide emerged, and so they haven't been close.
Peter doesn't care too much for Claire, Anne's other half.
Yeah, right.
Why can't Peter just accept Claire?
Good question. I mean, I think there's always the step-parent dynamic, right? The step-parent has come in and intruded in some sense. I think the particularity of it here is that Peter's father died right around the time that that his mother and Claire were getting together. And so I think when there's a big death in a family, usually either everybody scatters to the wind or people get tighter. Do you know what I mean? There's at least I've sort of seen that and experienced it myself. We as a family, in my case, got tighter around when there was a death in the family. And so I think that's sort of what Peter maybe had wanted, and it was more like it went that way because Anne went off and did her thing, not long after.
What about his sister?
Totally different person.
Yeah.
Totally different person.
It's
Much
interesting.
more garrulous, open, kind of fun-loving, sense of humor, more sense of humor. And they're very much like opposites. So she initially also hates Claire for the same reasons, but then she's now much more down with the whole thing and kind of thinks it's cool that her mother's got a spiritual retreat center, and yeah.
In flashbacks, we learn about Peter's relationship with a boy named Jared in high school. How much had Peter thought about Jared before this asylum case comes into his life? This asylum case with Vassal, a young gay man.
Yeah. Well, so what I want to say is, in a sense, it's the same thing. Like, so what happens to them after? It's like, well, there is only the book. Do you know what I mean? So in a sense, like, I don't know because I wasn't writing him when he wasn't, So in a sense, I suppose I want to say probably not much, in as much as in the writing of the book, I realized that he's keeping this thing apart. And, he has a kind of very casual relationship with a guy in the book who's not a major character, but I think that's probably the kind of relationships he's had,
Right.
Sort of like hookup culture. And so I would say he probably hasn't thought about it a lot.
We're kind of going to go into spoiler territory, just
Yeah,
saying that right
that's fine.
now.
Book's been out for months.
Peter is living with crippling guilt because Jared died.
Mhm.
How is the guilt affecting the way Peter lives his life?
I now feel like his therapist, having to account for him. I think in some sense, he's trying to help other people because he feels as though he didn't help in the moment, or more than didn't help, but was a cause. So, I think you think about why do people go into professions where they're war journalists or they're therapists for people with very difficult problems, or there's it can be all altruism, but I interviewed a lot of immigration lawyers, talked to a lot of people who do this work, and I think for some number of people, you are driven to do something that is selfless in the sense of it's never about you. It's always about the other people that you're helping. And so I think that's the main thing that it's channeled him into in some way.
Let's get our microphones out. I've got a couple more questions, and then we're going to go to you, folks in the audience. All right, we had a big debate in our office about this.
Yeah.
About Anne. Anne lying by omission.
Uh-huh.
Did she mean to protect her son? Was she in grief? Did she break the law by not telling what happened with her son and Jared?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, yes. I guess I would say yes to all those things. I mean, I was wanted to create a situation where a reader would imagine what would they do in this circumstance. Um, it just, the opportunity presents itself for her to say one thing very quickly to the police when they show up at the door, and it all disappears. And her sense is also that he wasn't responsible for what happened. And so, but she senses that he feels responsible, and he's an adolescent, and she's worried about the criminal justice system and how it will treat him. So, yes, there is an omission. Yeah.
Let's go to the audience for questions. I see a hand here up front. There's
Yeah.
a mic coming to you. Hold on one second. Here comes Simon.
So Anne is a clergy person, and you get the feeling at this revelation that the one person she's not ministering to is her own son.
Mm-hmm.
Do I read that correctly? That she just can't hear him, can't do for him what she does for everybody else?
Yeah, yes. I mean, I guess I couldn't write about someone for as long as I wrote about either of these people or any of these people without taking some sympathy for them. So I have some sympathy for the circumstance she finds herself in. But yes, in a sense, but should a minister be a minister to a child? I mean, she should be the mother to the child, right? And the instinct is protection rather than revelation in that moment. But I think maybe also you're getting at, can she hear more deeply, not just the incident, but essentially his desire. And they have a conversation about that towards the end of the book, and she does acknowledge that there is something about male desire in particular that she associates with violence, and that she sort of saw as erupting in her son. And there was part of her that was like, no. There's a sort of, yes, there's a kind of negation through a kind of silence. And that's the message that Peter internalizes in some way. So it's like his mother is essentially saying, this didn't happen the way you think it happened. And to answer the question you asked earlier, that's in a sense how he deals with it, which is like, okay, it didn't happen. So I'm not thinking about it that way. But yet he had his own experience of it. So yeah, I think that's right, basically.
And
There's another question just behind.
I was struck by Sandra, Vassal, and even Peter, in a sense that there's somebody trying to tell them how to do it. Like Peter has a scenario, and Vassal and Sandra end up not really listening to him. They go, she goes to Florida.
Yeah.
Vassal disappears.
Yeah.
And then Peter's mother tells him, this is how you have to handle this thing.
Yeah.
And then he goes to visit Susan, I think Jared's mother.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been holding this sense of responsibility for her.
Yeah.
And he goes and sees, oh, she had a life afterwards. And
Yeah.
it made me wonder about this question of sort of like agency and trying to solve things for other people.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yes. I think, yeah, and in fact, directly on what you just said, one of the things that Anne thinks about and considers when she's talking to people in these circles that they do at the retreat center is she can't be prescriptive, right? I mean, if the first thing they do when someone comes in is they announce a problem, they're like, well, you should do X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, that's just giving advice. It's not necessarily hearing fully what the person has to say. So, I mean, the complexity here, of course, is for someone who's an immigration lawyer, there are right? Like there are things that are prudential to do for your case and there are things that are not so good to do for your case. And so his duty as a lawyer is to point those things out to his clients. But that's not to say that it isn't emotionally messy in the way you're talking about. One of the immigration lawyers that I interviewed for the book was talking about that. He's like, the trouble is sometimes our legal duty and our emotional, obligations are different. And that's the question, is how you navigate it. And always when I'm writing, what I want to do is put the reader in the shoes of the character and just have them live there for a while, and not editorial, not a sense of like, you should do it this way, you should do it that way, but have them live inside that person's, I think that's what fiction does. It's why I read myself. So
I was wondering, how much did you allow Vassal to follow the rules? Because he goes in and out about
yeah,
whether he's going to follow Peter's rules, when he should show up,
yeah,
what he should show up wearing.
yeah. I mean, I think he's a young guy, right? Like there's a kind of fickleness to him, right? I mean, he's like, he blows hot and cold. I think he's also in a way, he's figuring out coming out. He's an immigrant. He's in New York. He's figuring out being like a queer kid in New York, and Peter's an older gay man, and like so he has like, oh, you must live in like a beautiful apartment with lots of views of Central Park, and like you've got a husband and all this stuff, and so he's sort of drawn to him for nothing to do with his case,
Yeah.
but to sort of poke and figure out like, so how do I fit in, and how do you fit in? So yeah, there's a back and forth. He also wants to be an artist. So
Any more questions?
yeah, the center there.
She's got one here.
Hi. Just want to say, like, after I completed the book, I had to go back and reread the first page because when I first read it, I was so confident, thinking he has to tell his mother something, and it's something nice that happened on a date or in the car. And then after the reveal, you totally understand
Yeah.
what actually happened, and then like what happened between him and Jared is like revealed slowly over time through the flashbacks in parallel to Vassal's.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, like sort of a writing question, how you develop that overall structure with the parallel flashbacks and the
Yeah.
relation like to the overall emotional impact of the story.
Yeah,
Great question.
yeah, it is a good question. So I wanted to create for the reader, and so essentially had to create for myself the experience of this coming into view slowly. So the book is written in sections. Some of them are longer and sort of chapter-like. Some of them are quite brief. But I think that's when there's something that we're not looking at. When we do start to look at it, it comes in pieces, right? You don't see the whole thing suddenly in a full narrative from beginning to end. You like glimpse something, and then it drifts away again. It's like islands in the fog, that you don't really know how they're connected yet. And so I wanted, to the extent that I could, reproduce in the reader somewhat the experience of dissociation. So that little piece at the beginning, the very beginning of the book, you kind of have to forget it because there's nothing to hold on to, right? That you don't know much of what it means. So in a sense, you just now are thrown into a courtroom and you're doing other things. So I put it together sort of as you read it. I mean, not exactly, but I really write until the very end. So I don't finish a draft and then go back and rewrite the whole thing. So the last pages of this book I wrote in the last 2 days before I had to hand in the last draft to the last edition to the editor.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's impressive. Let's get this one more question, and then we'll start to wrap up.
I'm curious why so many people who were educated as lawyers end up writing novels when the style of writing legal materials is normally extremely tight, overly tight, but
Yeah.
extremely tight, while writing fiction has loose ends and ambiguity. And how do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So my answer is somewhat easy, which is that I was writing fiction before I went to law school, and then published my first book when I was in law school, and then thought, oh, I don't have to be a lawyer. I didn't become a lawyer. But you're right that I think the main difference is that in law, you're trying to write kind of impregnable sentences, that be like in a contract, like party A wants it to mean this, party B wants it to mean that, but no, it can only mean this. It's sort of an illusion that you can write such sentences. But that was the part that I think it took me a while to get out of when I got out of law school, which is, precision is great and it's very useful in writing, very, very useful, but it's not the goal. It's not the end. You do need you need space and ambiguity that's under some kind of control. But yeah.
The book's been out for a little while.
Yes.
What is something you've wanted to say about it that you haven't gotten to say about it?
Well, I actually got to say what I wanted to say a little earlier at the beginning of the interview, because I wanted to talk about loneliness, because I think it's such a common experience. It's a common human experience, but more common now perhaps than ever in terms of people living on their own. More people live on their own than ever have before. And even if you're not living on your own, the forms of technology we have, the way society is put together. I think loneliness is an experience that often has a lot of shame attached to it at the same time. And I wanted to write a character and write about circumstances where that came up and the consequences of it came up. So that's sort of what I wanted to say.
Adam Haslett, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All right, everybody. The Ophelias are a Cincinnati-born band who put out their 4th album this Friday. It's titled Spring Grove, and they're here with a preview. The Ophelias will kick off a North American tour this weekend with a show in Brooklyn on Saturday. Please welcome Spencer Peppett, Joe Schaefer, Mick Adams, and Kate Goddard, the Ophelias.
Hi, everyone. We're the Ophelias. Thanks so much for having us. Not like I could have told the future, but it makes sense. You say that in the years to come, you wish me all the best, and I don't doubt it for a second that you know it's cruel. You are already prematurely gray, so you can choose the rules. In the trunk of the car are going to start to bang on the back window, cursing at nothing, smashing the taillights and waving hello, saying you better pull over. Not like I'm blissful being stuck in here. My palpitations last so long that I can overhear the next decisions being made without me in the room. These things are means nothing. Cling to the shadow of a doubt. Without it, everything is clear. I am sorry I didn't talk. Looking back, a skittish deer. I've been forcing my way through like a high school kid, expecting everything to work out on the other end. I know that you are gonna miss me more than you know you will. The sweetness of being young and unaware. Spring was clear and bright. We drove down to the river. I thought I could see the end, but it all disappeared. Thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. All right, so I read that a bunch of your demos you recorded in 2020 and used like a rank choice voting for what would end
Yes.
up on the album. How did that work?
Yeah, so it was me, my three bandmates, and our producer, Julian Baker, of Boy
Genius.
Genius, etc. And I sent her a Google Drive folder of, I think, 20-something songs. And so everyone made a rank choice list of their favorites. And, you know, it was like 3 absolute non-negotiables and then the rest that we would like to do. And it was cool. A lot of people had the same favorites, which ended up, you know, the one we just played was the first single from the record, and that was on everyone's list, I think.
The new album is called Spring Grove.
It is.
I understand that's the name of a funeral home?
Cemetery.
Cemetery, a
Yes.
cemetery in Cincinnati. How did it become the right title for the album?
Yeah, you know, that is also a song on the record, and we didn't know what the record was going to be called when we recorded it. And we did that song, and we were driving home, and Mick, our drummer, and Andrea, our violinist, who is in grad school right now, so she's not here with us, but the two of them said that has to be the title for the record. So I don't know. I like it when they tell me what the title should be. I liked that.
On your webpage, it says born Cincinnati and then has an arrow to New York.
Yeah.
So are you a New York-based band or are you all from different places?
You know, you can take the band out of Ohio. You cannot take the Ohio out of the band. We formed in Cincinnati, and now we're kind of spread out all over the place. Joe, our bassist, and I are here in New York. Mick is in Chicago. Andrea is in grad school in the DC area. And we also have some touring violinists who play with us. So Kate is located in New York as well.
All right. What do you think, what is it about New York City that appears in your music?
It's funny. I feel like Ohio appears more.
Yeah? Okay.
But every once in a while, something about New York will sneak in. Like, you know, there's a line about crying on the subway, and I feel like that's a very New York experience.
As you said, Julian Baker produced this record. What did it mean to you? This is the first record she's produced.
Yes.
What did it mean to you that she decided to produce your band?
I mean, it was a huge honor. Like, I kind of can't even accurately express that. Yeah, she had sung harmonies on another song of ours from our previous record, and we got a call like a couple weeks after she did that, and they said she wants to produce your next record, and okay. I mean, of course, right?
Yeah.
And you know, she's a wonderful producer. I mean, I kind of can't believe she hadn't done it before. She's so well suited for it, and made the recording experience and the studio experience just so welcoming and warm, and she knows so much about recording. I think she got an engineering degree, like music engineering, and
Yeah,
so
I was going to ask, what was different about recording with her?
We've been joking, she can kind of control time a little bit. Like, I don't know if anyone has made a record before, but you always kind of feel like you're running out of time because you have the studio for a set amount of days. You're trying to, most of the time, do more songs than you probably can or should in the time that you have. But working with JB, it always kind of felt like we were on the right side of the clock somehow, even when we definitely weren't. I think that she has a really wonderful kind of temperament for it. And we also kept everything set up so we could move between different stations. So if something wasn't working or we were getting frustrated and couldn't play a part or for whatever reason, we would just kind of move around. It felt very fluid. And so I think, yeah, she can control time, I guess.
When you go on your Instagram, there's a little description of your music as moth music.
Yeah.
What is moth music?
Andrea coined that term when we started the band in high school, which is crazy. I think I know now what it means, like 10 years later. I would say it means cathartic orchestral indie rock.
Okay. Our book this month follows this man who is trying to figure out his identity, who he is, what he wants to be, what he wants his relationship with his mother to be. He has questions about his own queerness. The last years have explored a lot of, you've explored a lot of identity in your own music and in the band. Where do the ideas about identity fit into the music you make?
You know, I think I kind of feel like all music is about identity, whoever is writing it. So as we kind of started to explore these other facets, for context, Joe, our bassist, and Mick, our drummer, are both trans. Mick is a trans man, Joe is a trans woman, and that stuff kind of bubbled up over the last few years, and they both came out. And I don't know, hearing them talk about it in this press cycle has been so wonderful and so illuminating. I feel like you don't often get to have, you know, trans people in conversation with each other talking about something like a record that we have made together, right? So I'll just kind of parrot what they said, which is it feels like we've all gotten a lot more confident in ourselves, and I think that is reflected in the music that we've made. I think that you can hear our voices more strongly, and I think that the choices that we've made musically have also been informed by the choices that we've made in an identity kind of way.
That sounds like a happy place to be.
Absolutely. It's amazing. It's great.
The album comes out on Friday.
It does.
You have a release show in Brooklyn this weekend.
We do, yes.
What are you most excited about? You've had albums out before, but what are you really excited about this tour and around this album?
You know, it took a long time for this album to come out. We've been sitting on it for like 3 years. I mean, mixing it took a long time, and getting it kind of ready to enter the world just took longer. And so I have been joking, I kind of feel like I've been pregnant for like 3 years. So I'm really thrilled to kind of birth, I guess, the record into the world. Yeah, I'm really excited about these shows. I feel like our live set has gotten, you wouldn't be able to tell from this, but a lot louder. We're in a library, so we're being very quiet. But I feel like our live set has definitely gotten tighter and louder and more complex over the last few years, and I'm excited to play a lot of these songs live for the first time at these shows.
We played a couple more songs for us?
Absolutely,
2 more?
yes.
All right, let's welcome the Ophelias.
Thank you so much. This song is called Open Sky.
Control me in your back pocket again. I'm sorry for everything he said. I don't see you anymore. It's been 3 years. I'm better off, but I had heard what's going on, and I have got a single thought. It's good for you. I'm really happy for you. You can take it how you wanna take it. No need for reciprocation. Maybe on the other side the dust will settle down to open sky. Above me, at least you took the dog. He's 40. I think you're better off. I know I was part of this, and I know I'm not holding my breath. Things have changed. I don't have interest in rehashing, but I'll say this: good for you. I'm really happy for you. You can take it how you wanna take it. No need for reciprocation. Maybe on the other side the dust will settle down to open sky. Thank you. Really quick while I tune, I will tell you that our show is this Saturday at the Broadway, and it starts at 7 if you're interested. We will be playing loudly. Also, we love the library, so this is really wonderful. Thank you again for having us. And we also love the radio. It's like a combination of our two favorite things. All right, this is our final song. Thanks again for having us. I'm so excited to read Mothers and Sons. What a wonderful Q&A, and I'm so excited to read it. And thank you again for having us. This song is called Vulture Tree, and our album comes out on Friday. Just so crazy to me. Thanks. Reconvene at the vulture tree. Count 117 days I scrubbed at the stains in the corners. What did you clearly say? Facing south at the river edge, pulling a sword from between the rock and the hardest plea. They tell me to get rid of you. I have to burn an effigy, but it didn't work on the vultures. So why would it work for me? The experts say to clear the pain, to set your memory up in flames, but the birds in the tree are laughing. They know it's a game. Reconvene on the corner of Elm. Tell me I don't look sick anymore. I'm walking like someone clicked autopilot. Every car is a mirror now. Every street light is blinding. Snuff me out like a fun house and leave me clawing. They tell me to get rid of you. I have to burn an effigy, but it didn't work on the vultures. So why would it work for me? The experts say to clear the pain. I set your memory up in flames, but the birds in the tree are laughing. They know it's a game. Thank you so much for the Ophelias.
Thank you so much to the Ophelias and, of course, to Adam Haslett. Adam will be signing books out in the lobby. Thanks to our partners, the New York Public Library, for hosting us here and all of those e-copies. Thanks to Park Boulevard for streaming it, making it look so nice for our virtual viewers. And thanks to WNYC's producers and engineers for getting this ready for the radio. Okay, our April Get Lit with All of It book club will be, drum roll please, The Dream Hotel by Leila Leilami. This is a really good book. It's set in the near future. The story follows a woman who is detained after the algorithm analyzes her dreams and determines she's at risk of hurting her own husband. Dun, dun, dun. Leila will be joining us right back here for an event Tuesday, May 6th. So you've got over a month to read the book. Mark your calendars, and we'll see you back here on May 6th. Thanks, everybody.